How y'all doing today? It's your boy Jermaine from Hognose Hogs, back with another video. And I've been getting a lot of requests to make a video about how to get a picky hognose snake to eat, or for people that just got their new baby hognose snake and they're having a hard time getting them to eat on a consistent basis. So let's talk about it. Alright, and so I actually made a video about different strategies that you can use to get a picky hognose snake to eat. So I'm going to leave that video in the description, as well as I'm going to leave a card at the top of this so you can check that video out after you watch this. But in this video, I'm going to go more in depth, specifically over all my different hognose snakes, and basically just kind of cover their history of eating and things that I've tried that failed and things that I do now that allows them to eat on a consistent basis. And so before we get into that, I'm just gonna go over the basics on how I set up my hognose snake. So basically I use just a simple rack system, and on the hot spot with the heat tape, I keep that around 90 to 91 degrees. And then the ambient temperature in my place ranges from 72 to 76 degrees. In terms of humidity, I've never checked humidity, so I'm not really sure, but I live in South Florida, so the humidity is gonna be a lot higher than other places around the United States, especially in the north. And in terms of my feeding schedule, I feed 2 days a week. So I feed on Sundays and I feed on Thursdays. My baby hognose snakes, the ones that are like 30 grams and less, I feed them twice a week, so Sunday and Thursday. So that kind of gives them a feeding every 3 to 4 days. And my sub-adult and adult hognose snakes, I just feed them once per week. So usually that's on Sunday. But for example, if a snake doesn't eat on a Sunday, then I wait till Thursday to try to introduce another food item to them. So if they for some reason don't want to eat one day, I don't try to feed them the next day. I kind of give them a break and try to get them on a different schedule. And then if they eat, like one of my sub-adults, if they skip Sunday but then they finally eat Thursday, I don't feed them again until the next Thursday. So with that being said, let's get into each one of my snakes, and I'm gonna start off with the snakes that have no problems eating, and then as we go on, I'll get into more of my difficult snakes that I had to do a lot of trial and error to get them to start eating. All right, so the first snake we're gonna talk about is Cheeto, and I purchased Cheeto April of 2020. She is what you call a sunburst, so she is a visual albino sable female. And fortunately with her, I've never had any issues with her eating. She will eat off the tongs, she will eat by hand. I can take her out of her enclosure and eat. And since I've had her, she's only missed one feeding, one time. I'm not really sure why, but then the next time I tried feeding her, she ate it again. And she's actually kind of like a garbage disposal. So sometimes whenever one of my hognose snakes don't eat their meal, I'll actually off camera give her an extra pinky or an extra mouse hopper. So with her, she's just one of my good hognose snakes, my strong feeders, and I never had any issues with Cheeto. All right, so the second hognose snake I want to talk about is Sassy. So she's actually my normal female hognose snake. She was actually my second hognose that I ever purchased. I got her off of Craigslist. And for the most of the time that I've had her, she's never had any issues eating. Whether it was feeding her twice a week when she was a small hognose snake, or now feeding her once a week as a sub-adult. But for some reason, she went like 6 weeks without eating. For some reason, every time I would introduce food to her, she wouldn't eat it. I even tried scenting, she wouldn't eat it. I tried leaving it in her enclosure, she didn't eat. And then eventually she went into shed, and then after she came out of shed, she started back eating on a consistent basis. So I'm not really sure why she went in that little dry spell to where she didn't want to eat, but you know what I'm saying, I didn't panic. Like I said, she went 6 weeks without eating. She did lose a few grams of body weight, but she started back eating. But overall, she's been a great feeder, and I haven't had any issues feeding her by tongs or feeding her by hand or taking her out of her enclosure. All right, the next hognose I want to talk about is going to be Noodle, and he is a visual albino Arctic hognose. He was my first hognose snake that I ever got. And since I had him, I've never had any major issues with getting him to eat. Every once in a while, he'll skip a meal. Sometimes he's just not interested. I think the most he's ever missed consecutively was probably 2 meals, but then he usually gets back onto eating. I haven't had to do anything special. It's just continuing to introduce mice to him, and eventually he kind of gets on to it. So he's never really been a picky eater either, so I was fortunate with him. All right, so the next snake I want to talk about is Steve. So he is a visual anaconda, but he also carries the albino and disabled gene. And so he's going to be the first one of my snakes to where he actually started out as a good eater, but then he became a picky eater. And basically I had to alter different strategies that I used to feed him. So when I first got him, I think I got him in April as well, April 2020. He was a very good eater. I would take him out of his enclosure and feed him on camera, and he would eat the pinkies or the mice hoppers without any issues every time. It didn't matter. He's never been one to eat off of tongs though, but then for some reason he just stopped eating, and he actually went 2 months without eating. And basically one day I just decided to put the pinky in his enclosure, and I came back a couple hours later and it was gone. So he was the first hognose snake that I actually ever tried leaving the pinky in his enclosure and doing that with success. And then I started kind of doing that over the weeks, and then he still became hit or miss. Sometimes I would leave the pinky in his enclosure, he would eat it. Sometimes he wouldn't eat it at all. And so then I started scenting those pinkies with sardines. And once I started doing that, he eats every time. So he went from eating normally to now I have to leave the pinky or the mouse hopper in his enclosure on a plastic deli cup lid, and it has to be scented with sardines. And he's been eating consistently ever since I've been doing that. All right, so the next hognose snake I want to talk about is my girl named Hazel. She's just a regular anaconda hognose snake. I got her at the Daytona Reptile Expo, August 2020. And when I first got her, she was very skittish and I had issues getting her to eat. And so one of the strategies that I found that worked with her was actually putting her in a deli cup. So whenever I would try to tongue feed her, she was just too scared of me and it just didn't work out. But once I started feeding her on a regular basis in a deli cup, and she started associating me with getting food, eventually she got to the point where she started eating off of tongs. And now she's so good that she'll eat anything. She'll eat Repulink, she'll eat off of tongs, and every time I open her enclosure, she's looking for food. So she's one of the hognose snakes that I actually had to use the deli cup method with, and eventually it became successful. All right, so now the next hognose snake I want to talk about is Storm. So she's a female toxics, which means she's a visual axanthic toffee belly. And I purchased her and I never had any issues with her eating. I think since I got her, she only missed 2 feedings. And she has one of the strongest feeding responses out of all my hognose snakes. So I got lucky with her. Basically every time I open up her enclosure, she charges out looking for food. So I don't have to do anything special with her. She'll eat by hand, she'll eat by tongs. I don't have to scent anything, and I've never had to use a deli cup with her. All right, so the next hognose I want to talk about is my female named Peggy. So she's a normal looking hognose snake, but she carries the leucistic gene. She's also my youngest and my most recent hognose snake that I purchased. And if you watch my videos from week to week, she does not like to eat from tongs. She gets scared of my camera. She's scared of me. Whenever she sees me, she gets in defensive posture. She starts bluff striking. She starts musking and everything like that. It's only been 2 times that she's actually eaten off the tongs for me, and I don't think I've caught either one on camera. And so basically, when I first got her, the first time I fed her, she wouldn't eat off tongs, so I actually tried the deli cup method, and she ate the pinky from the deli cup. Ever since that one time, the deli cup method does not work for her. I think it stresses her out. I can leave her with the pinky in the deli cup all night long. She will not touch it. She won't eat Reptilinks or anything. And so what I found to actually work for her is I have to leave the pinky in her enclosure and let her eat it on her own. And not only just a regular pinky, I have to scent the pinky with sardines. I think that smell of sardines will actually stimulate her taste buds. And basically ever since I started doing that, within 10 to 15 minutes, she goes and gets the pinky. So she's one that eventually I'll think she'll get to the point where she can eat off tongs, but for now, she likes her own privacy. All right, and so the last hognose I want to talk about is going to be Onyx. So he is my eastern hognose. And if you don't know anything about eastern hognose snakes, in the wild, they basically exclusively feed on amphibians, whether it's toads or frogs. So when you have them in captivity, it's very hard to get them to eat mice. And so I knew that before I got him, so I invested in Reptilinks as well as some frog scent. And he has been very hit and miss in terms of eating pinkies. The guy that I purchased him from, he actually was eating toad scented mice before I got him in my possession. But since I got him in my possession, it's been very hard to get him to eat mice. So I've tried everything. So you see on my weekly videos, I always put him in a deli cup. And sometimes he eats the mice, sometimes he doesn't. He eats Reptilinks with no problem. He'll also eat frozen thawed Cuban tree frogs with no issues. And right now, I'm basically gonna start doing a strategy where I feed him a Reptilink, but then I kind of chase it with a pinky while he's still eating the Reptilink, just so he can kind of get used to eating the pinky. Because I think he kind of gets confused, because he'll actually start smelling the pinky when it's scented with the toad scent, but then it's like he doesn't recognize it as a toad and he doesn't eat it. And he will not eat it even if I put him in a deli cup, if I leave it out in his enclosure, whatever. Even if I scent the pinky with tuna, I've tried tuna, sardines, and salmon, he does not want to eat it. It's only toad juice, or it has to be like a Reptilink. So he's very special, and he's pretty difficult, and I kind of knew what I was getting into, but I'm continuing to work with him, and I think eventually he'll get to the point of eating mice. All right, so with that being said, as you can see, all hognose snakes are gonna be different. And if you have enough hognose snakes, you're gonna get to the point where you run across a picky eater. But don't panic, you know what I'm saying? It's a lot of different strategies that you can use. And like I say, all hognose snakes are different. One strategy may work with one hognose snake and another may work with one. So you just gotta keep on doing it, trial and error. And once you find something that works, just stick with it. And then you can kind of gradually progress it to where they'll start eating off of tongs, as they can kind of associate yourself with being a food provider. And with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe to the channel, you can like it, you can leave a comment at the bottom, and you can follow me on all three of my social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. They're going to be in a link in the description. And I'll see y'all for the next one.